There we go. Confirm that that's working, Blaine. That is loading up here. Okay, we're good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to visit with us this morning. It appears to be a straightforward agenda, and we'll try to move through it efficiently so you can get back to your other work. But I appreciate your commitment, both in time and energy to Utopia and its success, and also want to express appreciation to the staff who do a remarkable job to keep the organization moving and being very productive. So thank you. Hope all of you and your families are well. We have just 4 items on the agenda this morning, and then we'll be happy to accommodate any other questions that may come up from the board. The second item is a approval of a set of minutes from June 24th of 2024. Are there any proposed additions or deletions to those minutes? Okay, if not, I'll be happy to entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll move to approve those minutes. This is Adam from Linden.
Second.
Okay. Thank you,
Matt
Adam.
Dahl.
I have a motion from Adam and a second from Matt to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Okay, appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item is a financial update to be presented by Jason Roberts, our Chief Financial Officer. Jason?
Thanks, Alex. I'll hurry and share my screen here. I'm showing here on the screen the financial update through June 30th, 2024. This does include a lot of activity that happened in July that was moved back into June. So these are getting close to good numbers, close to final. Just so everybody knows kind of how we have this set up here, we have our first 3 columns here that show a period ended, which in this case is June 30th, 2023 versus June 30th, 2024. Every time I present this, if I present it for February's numbers, it'll be February 28, 2023 versus February 28, 2024. It'll show the same time period here. For the year end, it just happens the time period ends up being the same as the budget time period. But the last columns here are showing where we project to end the year versus budgeted. Of course, for June 30th, the projected is the actuals. We actually see the numbers come through at. So that's kind of how this is set up for those of you who may not have a lot of experience looking at this. What we're going to focus mainly on here is the projected through the budget for June 30th, 2024. If we look at revenues here, we'll see that residential transport revenue came in just slightly lower than what we had budgeted, along with commercial transport revenue. But these were offset by access fees for bandwidth and access fees for fiber leases coming in higher than we thought they would be. So if you look at our total revenue for the year, we're actually coming in slightly better than where we had budgeted. The exception is miscellaneous operating revenue. One of the things the state requires by state law is I have to show that we budget to have a reduction of fund balance deficit. And we do budget for that, and we budget for that to come in through miscellaneous income, but we haven't hit those numbers consistently on miscellaneous income. So you'll notice that our miscellaneous income revenue numbers are slightly lower than what we had projected. But as far as cash flow goes, our cash flow is still very, very close to where we expected it to be. Operating expenses, a little bit of the same story here. If you look at payroll for the year, we're expecting to be roughly $900,000 lower than what we had budgeted. And this will be offset by some other expenses we have. I actually don't remember those off the top of my head. Oh, those are related to equipment that are sold to our partners. So usually that line ends up being a net zero because it comes through miscellaneous revenue to offset the other expense that we see coming through there. Most of that is offset by that. We've talked in the past and in the year-end budget revision. I don't think I have the year-end budget revision reflected here, We did have some operating expenses that were higher than budgeted. And that was due to, we just saw more line breaks this year than we've seen in prior years. We had a higher cycle and some of the costs were higher for that. And we had some equipment expenses that were slightly higher than budget. But overall, if you look at our net cash flow, it was good. We had $700,000 from net cash flow coming in from operations. So I would say that's pretty good for Utopia compared to where we've been in the past there for sure. The bottom here, we have the capital financing areas. These areas look a little bit worse than what we would have expected. The first line I want to bring up is there's a sale of assets line of $850,000 that made its way to the budget. This was for assets that we did sell to Bountiful. When I did the budget a year ago in 2023 in April, we thought that was going to happen after June 30th. It ended up happening before June 30th. So that sale did happen. We just went over budget the year before by that $850,000 and it sat in fund balance. So that money's still there. Additionally, our revenue from Bountiful Construction Management Services has been a little less than what we had budgeted. This is partly because just trying to budget that number was very difficult to know how fast construction would actually go in Bountiful. And what we actually found is that some of our costs were a little more front loaded than we ended up billing them for some of the expenses. We think that's okay because we required a prepayment of $4 million in the prior year for the Bountiful contract. And so we think everything's still looking good in Bountiful, but we actually are expecting higher revenue in fiscal year 2025 as we start doing some of our splicing and laying of cable. Right now, most of what's happened is buying equipment and putting in conduit in the ground. And we found out that's a little more expensive than, as far as the total percentage of the project, than how we ended up putting it in for the revenue. So basically, we're expecting better revenues numbers next year. We still think we're okay because we were covered by the $4 million prepayment we required from Bountiful. Down below, Bountiful project expenses are a little bit higher than what we had budgeted. And that's, once again, the timing thing that I was talking about before, where we have a difference in when revenue comes in versus when it's spent. About $1 million of that actually isn't even paid out for July until July. So if you look at our cash flow, it doesn't affect cash flow for the year, but the invoices are all put back into the prior year. The main reason I'm bringing all this up is these capital lines and revenue lines down here at the bottom are very critical that we watch so we understand what's going on with our capital projects during the year. Any questions on the financial update? I know I covered a lot right there.
So Jason, this is Alex. So it
Sorry.
sounds like your inference is that those are aberrations that should not be replicated or likely not to be replicated, or is that not accurate?
If you look at how we built, we tried to make the billing simple, and 60% of the cost of the project is billed through with conduit. And then the other 20% goes through as we put in cable, and 20% goes through as we do our splicing. We actually, looking in retrospect, we think much closer to 70 or 75% of our cost probably should have went in with the conduit. And so we'll make it up as we do our splicing and putting in cable, is what I'm being told right now from our people. And so we'll want to watch that closely to see that coming in next year, that the makeup and revenue does come through.
Okay, does our contract with them specify that percentage?
Yes,
Okay, so
it does. We think our overall costs are still good, and we're still pretty much in line with those.
Yeah, because of the timing of budgets, it looks like, oh, crud, we're out of pocket, 3 million or whatever, that we floated this and we'll get repaid eventually. But in the previous year, we did take a $4 million upfront payment for the project. So we're still ahead. We're just not as ahead as we wanted to be. And as we finish the splicing and conduit or cable work, on those projects, we'll build those areas out fully, and that'll be great. We'll be ahead of it, even on the tail end. We just have this middle period where we're not getting the benefit of the front payment because that was a previous budget year, and right now we're behind on the billing versus cost because we haven't hit the finish line with what we can build out fully on the splicing and cable pieces.
There's splicing cable,
Still good.
and technically there's also 5% retainage that we allowed in the contract. So between that, we're expecting big payments to come in on the back end of this.
Okay, aside from the financial issues you just described well, in terms of the kind of the foundational relationship with them and the rollout of the system, has there continued to be good cooperation and support from Bountiful City? Any other non-financial issues that we've encountered with the rollout there that we didn't expect?
I think it's going great. I mean, we are ahead of schedule on the build out of the system. We're not as ahead of schedule as we hope to be because there's been a number of canal permits that always kind of hit us, and so we give them, we try to under promise and over deliver, and we end up kind of in the middle somewhere where we still believe we'll come in within budget and ahead of schedule. But internally we're like faster. Let's beat this thing by a year and a half or something like that. We think we'll still be ahead of the day we committed to them, being a 3-year build out period. We think we'll be probably at 2.5 years at completion, which is still great, but internally we're kind of shooting for 2 years. But those darn permits, they held us up. So we're building a lot. There's a lot of construction going on. It feeds a little bit into this problem of we get ahead of it a little bit. We can't build out all of the project area until it's completed. And when we pivot to move construction of conduit to other areas, we actually get pushed a little bit further behind from a cash flow perspective. But well within the overall schedule of the project, we will get those finished out and build out and be in good shape. And again, it would be concerning if it's like this is looking like we're going to be going over budget and this doesn't ever catch up to us. But again, we had $4 million on the front of this to help make sure that wouldn't happen. And as we kind of use up all of that buffer, it doesn't look like we're going to get very far behind it. We'll get this thing built out and be in a great spot. And meanwhile, we're seeing revenues growing for every customer that comes on the system, because we're obviously getting paid both on the front of that project or for the build out of the system, but also the operations over time. And that's a UTOPIA relationship. So it's, a lot of these city projects are UIA projects. And so on a UTOPIA books, we don't really see it so much, but we do see this as a great, this is one where we're contracting with UTOPIA as an entity and be a good source of revenue growth for this organization.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Are there any questions from other board members?
Alex, this is Ifo.
Yes, Ifo.
I'm thinking maybe, Roger, maybe I need another. I know you spent maybe an hour and a half with me last time or 2 hours, and I don't want to hold up a meeting just because I'm just trying to wrap my mind around some of the, some of these things. I'm still learning. I think this is my second meeting, and so I was just a little confused with the Bountiful project. That's a UIA project, or is that?
It's not. So that one's a UTOPIA project. So where UIA issues the debt and owns a system, even if there's a contractual obligation from a city to backstop the debt or be involved in that, it would be a UIA project where there's no debt issuance for the organization, because UIA was really created to become a financing entity to finish out the build out of cities. But where that isn't at play, and the city is paying for their own project, and we're just an operating partner, we're like, well, that's where all the staff and resources are that actually run all of this stuff. And UIA pays UTOPIA for that for its projects, but in this situation with Bountiful or Idaho Falls or Bozeman project, even Woodland Hills all fall into a category where those cities paid outright for their own network, whether they financed it or not. We do make money off of the construction management and overhead into that first phase. But then they also fall in as a recurring revenue for us as we operate and maintain those systems. Sometimes we're more involved than others. With Bountiful, we're really doing everything there from an operations perspective. In Idaho Falls, they're doing kind of the local things with repairs and maintenance and that sort of stuff. We're just doing a subset of roles for that network. But those are UTOPIA relationships where there's no debt issuance involved. You know, we have no money out on any of those types of relationships. We're just using our resources to help expand our revenues, but also offer a benefit to those partners in their fiber networks. Obviously, they avoid a lot of the risk and cost of some of the other options out there. We price it in a way that's fair to them and to us. It's mutually beneficial, so we do get revenues from those systems, but they're able to do it at a good cost point and avoid some risks that they would have to start up their own operation. So, back to your question, this Bountiful is a UTOPIA relationship as opposed to UIA.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then remind me, with the payroll, it dropped about $1,932,000 because you moved it to professional services.
I'd say most of it's timing. We've had a lot of kind of positions that have been open here and there and haven't been filled entirely, and so we have hired some. We've had employees leave and backfilled and that, but there's been enough of that it shows up as a pretty big item there. So yeah. We're not really offsetting it, or at least not intentionally, with professional services, even though that did come in a little bit higher. Most of that is just unfilled position we budgeted for and haven't had full. Is that accurate, Jason? I would feel free to correct me if anything, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, it's unfilled positions. That's what's, and turnover and timing and that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Warning to our staff who's in on this meeting. That doesn't mean you get to go hire a bunch of people. only what's been budgeted for.
Yeah.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your questions, Ifo. Very good. Any other questions from the board?
I do have the charts of revenue to go over to Alex, just in case.
Okay. Yeah, proceed, Jason. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this will be quick. Just our year normal, this is the chart we look at every year, every month. The bottom blue line is UTOPIA revenues, the red line's UIA revenues, the green is the two combined. All I'm bringing up this month is, you'll notice, you look at the green line, and there's during April and May, there were very, very large increases, and then a slight increase in June. The reason there were such large increases especially during May, is we had about $60,000 of one-time installation fees come in May that made our revenue look higher. We actually got the cash. Our revenue was higher, but it wasn't recurring revenue. Necessarily, it was higher than normal. Let's put it that way. In June, we had very little installation revenue come in, so that's why it went down. But still, if you look at our increase coming in from March until May, for May and June, we were averaging something like $50,000 a month in total revenue, monthly revenue increases. That's a very, very good number for us. We had good months those months. Last thing on here is just showing, this is UIA. I know we're talking about UTOPIA, but of course we're all interested in what happens over at UIA. If you look at all these small lines, these are each incremental debt issuance that we've done in UIA. That includes all projects for cities that they backstop with their own money, and projects that are backstopped by UIA revenues. The cumulative amount is this light blue line right here. And then the top lines are revenue that we've generated off of all of those bonds that we've done. And if you'll notice, this blue revenue line, the space between the total amount of debt payments that we have and the total amount of monthly revenue that we're bringing in, is growing very quickly right now. And that's a very good thing for the organizations. It's good for a couple of reasons. A lot of our debt payments are coming on just the last couple of years on UIA. And so we're having sufficient revenues to do that, and we're having excess revenues that have increased the debt repayments to the cities at the end of every year. And this debt is what makes that possible. Any questions on the revenues?
Jason, Alex, again, is there, I don't know if you can respond to it or Roger, I didn't see if Kim was on it or not, but are we seeing any responses to our success in the market from any of the incumbents or any of the new providers that are trying to come into some of these markets or adjacent to some of the markets? Anything there on the competition side?
all,
that we're aware of?
Alex, I am on this call. I mean,
okay,
you
thank you,
didn't think
Kim.
I was here, but I'm here. We are seeing some aggressive pricing in some of our current markets by some of the incumbents who are building. We are aware of those aggressive pricing campaigns in those markets, and we are dialing up the marketing and efforts to combat some of those aggressive price points that we are currently seeing. I'm not really sure why we're seeing them right now, especially in these markets that some of the big incumbents are overbuilding us. But it will be interesting as we get farther down the road into kind of fighting this battle.
Yeah, I'd say we're not seeing widespread overbuilding of fiber, but we've seen some pockets. We've seen Brigham City get fiber built out there by CenturyLink, Lumen, and Quantum. I mean, that's all the same company with different brands. And the product itself wasn't doing well when it was first released there, but they've come in with a very strong door-to-door sales effort. And we've seen a tiny impact to our customer base there, about 20. We still had a net growth across the system, across all of our systems and partnerships of almost 1,000 over the last month. So it's a small impact relative to the growth we're still seeing. So we're still the better option and continue to take far more customers away from them than they're taking from us. But we did see that kind of very localized effort there in Brigham City this last month. So it's something that we're definitely keeping an eye on. You know, we don't want to be overconfident in our product, but at the same time, we're growing about as fast as we ever have been, adding customers across the board in all of our cities, with only that blip in Brigham City where we've seen that overbuild. We've seen them doing that in Layton and Centerville, increased construction from Lumen or Quantum, whatever we want to call them on this call. So again, we're kind of keeping tabs on that and wanting to make sure that we're competitive. Some of the things we've done recently to help with that is we had introduced a 2.5 gig product and lowered the price point of our 10 gig, and we are actually seeing more demand for the 2.5 gig than we expected, and we were running out of devices, and it was a little bit of a scramble. It was a good problem to have more demand for a higher end product with better revenue than we expected. We've since found multiple options to source devices from and are able to keep up with that. But we're doing really well, and you know, statistically, you'd be like it's just a blip right now to see that happening. But we're certainly keeping very close tabs on it, and our marketing team here with Kim and our partners are fantastic and working to combat that.
Thank you. Anything else you have, Jason, on the financial report?
No, that's all I had.
Okay, again, to the board, are there any final questions regarding the financial presentation? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Next item is a network update, and Roger's going to present that information.
Yeah, so in your packets at the bottom is where we have our subscriber report. So we have in aggregate as well as specific per city stats. Again, I would kind of point to the overall subscriber number is continuing to grow very well. And our take rates in each city, there's some exceptions here. We have the asterisks on the new cities. We kind of changed the denominator. It makes it difficult to really see a trend when we keep adding new areas of a city, and so it jumps around. But where we don't have the asterisk in new areas, we see consistent growth. Again, the only one we were really little bit worried about. I mean, you see this Brigham City has dropped the last couple of months, just, you know, a small amount. Although they also have new development going very fast in that city as well, that kind of works against us a little bit from a percent perspective. But overall, we're adding customers across the board. You can look at the by city even and see, you know, this chart here is kind of a fun one to see how cities are doing relative to each other. Idaho Falls has come on very, very strong, the third largest by subscriber count. That is a UTOPIA partnership. So we say, where do those revenues go? It's not as much revenue per customer because we're just doing knock functions and customer service and systems and back end and that with them. But it is a revenue growth opportunity for UTOPIA that's done probably better than expected, I'd say. And then we have our city specifics out here, and obviously that's available to you for referencing and also for use with your councils if you want to share that. But you can dig in and share that, you know, we are growing our subscribers across the board. On the financial side, we know we're in good shape relative to our subscriber growth because we do see that $50,000 average month over month. I remember back when we had Kurt Sudweeks here as our CFO, and I remember the day when we were really excited when we were doing over 10,000 a month and getting up into 12 and 13,000 a month over month increase in revenue. It was fantastic. It was the best we'd ever seen. It was a very exciting time, and here we are looking at 50,000 a month over month increases in revenues, and obviously the subscribers across the board in all these cities coming on the system is what's causing that. And it's all good news. It puts us in a position to be able to get additional debt to continue to do installations, but also to preserve the dividend or debt repayment back to the cities for the original bonds. We, you know, obviously that's a priority for us, not just maintain that, but to increase it. So being able to both fund our growth and continue to alleviate debt burden of the cities is our priority, and this type of growth is what we need to be able to do that, and it's going really well.
I will say, Roger, you said 50,000 average net growth. That's pretty good month. I think our average is closer to 30, 35.
Okay, so it's been really good the last couple of months.
I just don't like setting expectations and then having.
That's not the average for the whole year. Yeah, when we look at what's the net subscriber growth last month, it was a very good month. It was 999. We were literally one short of hitting 1,000 new customers net growth onto the system. And you think of all the years we've been at this, in 2004 were the first areas that went under construction. And it's taken us this many years to get to 67,000. Well, you know, more than half of those have come on just in the last couple of years. I mean, it's been very kind of an exponential type growth on the system, and that chart you see is definitely trends upward that way. It's not just a strong line of growth, and we continue to want to push the limit there. We want to be the best option for all of our businesses and residences in the cities that we serve. We continue to find opportunities for business revenue and partnerships. We just had the schools come on, like we always have a big group of cities or schools come on in July, because that's the timing they do for the schools in their UEN RFPs. So July will be a good month on the business revenue as a result. And we have our first 400 gigabit circuit that will be coming up with the school system. That's the largest circuit we've ever done, and the largest one the school system has ever done. We may have a press event related to that. We'll coordinate with them on that. But we're proud to be a solution for our universities in Utah, as well as the state of Utah uses us for many of their backbone connections. And so the bond that we approved is largely for installations in our existing cities, but also some of these business opportunities that are both important to our communities, but also present revenue opportunities for the organization. So having that bond approved at UIA and the meeting just before this is going to continue to support this type of growth. And we really, we don't want to get too comfortable in our success. We're always watching for competitive threats and trying to make sure we're the best option out there. But it's been a really good year for us, and a especially strong couple of months leading up to today. we're going to keep at it.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Are there any questions from the board of Roger or any other member of the staff? Okay, well, very good. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Have I missed anything, Roger or Krista? We intended
I
to
think
talk
we're
about?
good. Pretty painless agenda for today. If
Okay.
nothing comes up, we may recommend skipping our next board meeting because we don't have a lot of business out there, but we hadn't had an update because we had kind of a shortened evening meeting for our last board meeting. So we wanted to have it today to make sure everybody was feeling comfortable with the updates. But other than that, it's things are well and not a lot of ugly business to take care of or to just have long meetings. So that's all we have to share today.
Well, thank you, Roger. Again, thank you to the board members and to the staff for taking time out of your schedules. And also for those of you that are elected officials, thank you for the really important role that you play in helping Utopia to be successful in your own organizations. I understand just from being around a long time that those are not always easy avenues to navigate as political winds shift, but for staff members and employees of Utopia, we appreciate your leadership and strength on that. And also to the staff members in the various cities who new and that have been around for a while that support this venture. It's in my view, it's been a great blessing to the state of Utah and to the people of the state of Utah. Even with its spits and starts and ups and downs, it's proven to be something that provides true benefit for the residents of the state, helps them to be more productive and successful and happy in their life. They have access to world-class telecommunications infrastructure that otherwise they may not have. So anyway, don't want to be sappy about that, but just thank you for all that you do in your own communities to help make Utah a great place to live. So all the best to you. Be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. This is Evo.
Okay, thank you, Ifo. Second.
I'll second that. This is Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Very good. We'll stand adjourned then. Everybody have a great and safe day. Thank you.